Brooklyn, 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 Brooklyn.
Welcome to the JM Report. I'm your host, GoodOlJM. This is episode 94, coming to you from JM Studios in Tampa, Florida, the birthplace of pro wrestling. On this May 23rd, 2020, Saturday night, Memorial Day weekend. Those who are celebrating, hopefully everyone does it safely and peacefully. But unfortunately, as you heard at the very top of the episode, very sad and tragic news. And it didn't end there, as I'll get into a bit later on, of what happened earlier today, matter of fact. But what began as a missing person report turned into a tragedy. Shad Gaspard, known to be part of the tag team with Crime Time along with partner JTG in the WWE, has passed away. Last Sunday afternoon, Shad and his family were in Venice Beach, California, specifically at the Marina del Rey Beach, for a day for fun and basically for a day and fun in the sun activity with the family. All of a sudden, at least on my end of the spectrum, all of a sudden through Monday afternoon, there were missing posts of Shad Gaspard where the family shared their concern, as the world will come to find out that Shad and his 10-year-old son, along with a group of other swimmers who were in the waters, were caught in a powerful rip current around 4 p.m. local time Sunday afternoon. Shad Gaspard was the only one unaccounted for, according to the Los Angeles Fire Department, and mentioned during a press conference that Shad Gaspard did submerge after a huge wave crashed on top of him, which was the last time anyone had seen him. On Monday, per MVP's Twitter account, of course, Montel Vontedius Porter, put out a statement as a statement from the family, from the Gaspard family, on their behalf. At the time, we're not ready to give an official statement. Shad was still considered missing, and ask everyone to respect their wishes. On May 19th, which was about 2 days after Shad was reported missing, the U.S. Coast Guard suspended their search, but the case remained open. And it was at this time when the Gaspard family would release an official statement saying, "We would like to express our gratitude to the first responders who rescued our son and the lifeguards, Coast Guards, divers, fire, and police departments for their continued efforts to help out our beloved Shad. Shad is a fighter, a warrior, a magical soul. We are hoping and praying for his safe return. As a family, we thank you all for your concern and well wishes. Please continue to keep sending your positivity and prayers to our beloved Shad. From the entire Gaspard and Chickett family." According to witnesses, Gaspard told the lifeguards to bring his son to safety first, and that's when, well, right after that happened, it's when the wave came down crashing on him, as according to several witnesses, but they all sound very similar, that Shad's last words were to save his son as he was trying to raise him up to the lifeguards to get him to shore. And Shad Gaspard remained in the water. Down came the crashing waves and submerged him. From ESPN reports, there was a written piece of a documentary of the tragic incident the past weekend, and gives the account of the LAPD and the fire department's lifeguards division of how Gaspard sacrificed himself for the safety of his own son. It read, "The best way I can describe it is like being inside a front-loading washing machine. The waves keep crashing on you, pushing you down. I've been through that. Those kinds of resources, you think you might die." That's from a statement from the section chief of the LA County Fire Department Lifeguard Division. And it does happen, especially during hurricane seasons. The beaches, especially, they act and become very unpredictable at times, especially the deeper you go into the waters. I'm not aware of the protocols as far as reopening state by state goes for California. If there were, as far as the beaches go on in Venice Beach, if they were expected to be fully opened or at a certain capacity, or if anyone was allowed in the water, or if there were more than enough lifeguards on duty. I do not know any of those details and information other than what specifically happened with Shad Gaspard, but it does make you wonder. So, moving on. Well, I didn't realize how many notes I wrote about this one story, but the last spoken words: "Save my son, take my son." About, according to another witness, Steve Smith, who is a firefighter, paramedic from the Rescue 63 in Venice, that the boy kept saying that Dad told me to push off the guy as part of being saved when the waters were working against him to be handed over to the lifeguards. One of the other swimmers that were caught in the rip current. 3 minutes had passed before the boy was safe on shore. He was physically unharmed, but deeply distraught. And he just kept repeating that line that Dad told me to push off the guy. The guy, again, one of the swimmers, just as he turned back, making a hasty return into the ocean, the lifeguard saw the father again, Shad Gaspard. A wave pushed him under the impact zone. He didn't resurface after that. The rescue divers went in immediately. Then the Coast Guard. Still, there's no sighting of Shad Gaspard at this point, shortly after the son was rescued. So from this point on, there was search and rescue project for Shad Gaspard that lasted nearly 2 days. But on May 20th, the world would learn of the shocking, sad news of Shad Gaspard's body washed ashore on Venice Beach, and was later confirmed and identified that at the age of 39, Shad Gaspard had died. He was a big man, about 6'5", 6'7", somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 pounds. And listening to other, not from this day, but I looked around online and tried to see if anyone else had experienced something like this and give their account of what it is to experience these type of rip currents and to be pulled and submerged underneath the water for a certain amount of time and survive. There was one particular guy out from Florida, and he had a similar situation, not as difficult, but he didn't mention it. But by looking at him, he seemed to be a pretty big guy himself. a bit, as Gabriel Iglesias would say, a bit fluffy, but I would say just over 6 feet tall, my best guesstimation. And there was another, I guess, well, not a confession, but this teenage girl explaining her experience during spring break, and her and a bunch of friends, most of which could have easily lost their lives or been seriously hurt. But thankfully, there was a lifeguard boat passing by, and everyone was saved. And freshman college, give or take her year, and very petite-looking physique, and in a range of 5'5", 5'6" tall. But my point being is, when it comes to rip currents and there are huge waves around you, coming towards you, it doesn't matter how big or small you are, how light or heavy you are, depending who's asking. But it's no joke. Again, I'm not aware of any protocols, or if there were any signs. Again, if there were enough lifeguards in the area to tell them don't swim out too far, or if there was even any kind of notice at all heading towards the beach. And I'm not looking to blame anyone. These things happen and can happen literally out of nowhere. The waters could be calm 1 minute, and then the next, as if someone dropped a giant boulder a few yards from your position, and that would cause waves heading your directions as high as 6 feet tall, maybe even bigger than that. And Shad was the only one that was unable to survive from that small group of swimmers in that little bitter area in the waters. His wife would later release an official statement after the passing of her husband, sent out to all of the social media outlets under his name. Ciliana would say, the families would like to take this time to thank everyone for their prayers and support as we mourn the terrible loss of our beloved Shad. Shad was our whole world, and we were his. There are not enough words to describe what he means to all of us. He was our heart, our soul, our protector, our warrior. He was a bright force of nature who brought joy to many through his joyous and gratuitous nature. The outpouring of his love from Shad's friends, colleagues, and fans has meant more to us than you can ever imagine. We'd like to once again thank the lifeguards, coast guards, divers, fire, and police departments for their efforts. Shad was and will always be our real-life hero. Speaking of his colleagues, many of Shad Gaspard's friends were so shocked, even during the time where it was only first considered a missing person. Those in the wrestling community, such as Chris Masters, John Morrison, Lillian Garcia, who posted a video while the search was ongoing the first day. Ty Valkyrie all went to the beach where Shad went missing, hoping for the good news, and this to me showed tremendous and an amazing sign of friendship here. We, as fans, we might not have seen all these names mentioned, men and women, not work under the same umbrella, under the same wrestling company, and for some time. But I'm sure we all know that outside the business, they become close. They become friends, and so close they call each other family. Matter of fact, this reminds me of about a year ago. It was posted the next, actually no, a couple hours later after it happened, but when Kofi Kingston won the WWE title at last year's WrestleMania over Daniel Bryan, it was Shad Gaspard and MVP who were hanging out at a sports bar. and I don't remember who recorded it, but you see the 3 count, and then the cell phone pans over to Shad and MVP, and they just looked at each other, was smiling. They started slowly to cry, and then they just embraced each other. They were so happy for their friend finally winning the big one, knowing the struggles that Kofi at the time went through. What they say, 11 years. So yeah, Shad kept in touch with a lot of his friends from the WWE. Mark Henry would later on have a suggestion. He would tweet, "I'm going to miss my brother, even when roasting me for my taste in shorts. Warrior Award nominee, a true hero. Gaspard and his family are also getting the support from Al Snow and the Collar and Elbow brand. CXE has created a Gaspard T-shirt to honor Shad, and all proceeds will go to the GoFundMe page that has been opened, the Shad Gaspard Family Fund, with the goal of $100,000. As this fund serves more for a college fund for his son, Aria, if I'm pronouncing his name right. And a quick update about that, I should say. In less than a day and a half, the goal was reached and some. More than $127,000 as of this recording was donated to the Shad Gaspard Family Fund. A couple of notable donations. One from Tony Khan, who donated $10,000, and probably the one that sent over the goal, or put over the goal and beyond, I should say. It's yet to be confirmed, but many feel that it had to be him because of the, I guess, the screen name that you can use when you log into GoFundMe. CTC RIP, indicating Crime Time Cena, rest in peace. Many feel that it was John Cena himself that donated $40,000 to the Shad Gaspard family fund, as first reported on the Sean Ross Sapp Twitter account, saying that the fundraiser for Shad Gaspard's family exceeded its goal of $100,000. It was pushed over the top by a $40,000 donation from someone under the name CTC RIP. Did I say 400,000? I hope I didn't. My mistake. It was 40,000. And again, as of this recording, it's at about $127,000. And I couldn't imagine that helped ease the pain a little bit for the family, as now it's the next step to lay Shad Gaspard to rest. He will leave WWE. Had about 2 runs. I was going to have a list of his accomplishments here, but there's so much more besides WWE. And one of his goals after leaving WWE the last time was to pursue a Hollywood career, and didn't go so well, but he was successful to land on a few stunt gigs, on-screen stunts. Most recently, for those who saw the Birds of Prey movie. And it showed, I believe it's towards the end of the film, of the big battle between the Birds of Prey and their enemies, wielding guns and whatnot. You can see Shad Gaspard on screen and performing a few stunts, a few bumps, if you will. And even did the motion caption for the last God of War game back in 2018, I believe it was. So I would say it was a good start. Wasn't a quick rise to the top, but it was something. It was to get somewhere. I mean, you got to take these baby steps, and it's not like he came off the WWE with a name like The Rock or Batista or John Cena or Stone Cold, having all those accomplishments as much as they had, and assume that that can carry over into a career of Hollywood. No, or even by some luck that, hey, my name is Shad Gaspard, trying to pursue a career in acting or stunt work or both. And sometimes it's not always the talent. In this case, Shad, it's usually sometimes the roles that are presented to them. It may not always be the best. The scripts are not always written well. Directors may not always direct the performance properly to get the most, well, not only most entertaining but believable performance from your actors. You can have one of your favorite movies could be an action pack from beginning to end, and a dialogue would go with what's happening, but the delivery could absolutely suck. So it's a mix and match of all these and more, combining what could eventually become a great acting career, no matter how big or small the role is or where you are in the totem pole. But at least those, especially close to Shad Gaspard, can say that he tried and was not giving up. And if he's anything as close as his widow now described him as being a warrior, a true hero, to me, this doesn't sound like anyone that would give up so easily. And knowing that his last moments on Earth, his last act was to save his 10-year-old son. I don't think anyone can take that away from him. Many in the wrestling world share their thoughts, the condolences, the prayers throughout social media. NXT and SmackDown this week had their graph of Shad Gaspard announcing to the world who weren't aware that he passed away. He will be missed. I wish I met the man. And from what I've learned throughout the years, it seemed to be a lot of fun to hang out with, tons of laughs, and he's no longer with us. So moving forward, we'll see if there'll be sometimes when people pass, the family would will create some kind of an awareness, depending on how the loved one passed, and bring to the attention of maybe lawmakers or politicians, like, hey, listen. Again, I wasn't there, and I guess I just can't shake the fact that what was going on that was not in place, that was not said before anyone went into the waters, that could have prevented this. And talking around with some of my colleagues, especially at the new job, and I wasn't the only one, but what if the reopening of the states did not happen when it did, and maybe none of this would have happened? Again, it's all speculation, and I'm not anyone in any place to say otherwise and point fingers and blame anyone. It's no one's fault. No one caused this. No one physically caused this. No one forced anyone to go into the waters and have experienced what they did, only to have only one person basically sacrifice himself in order to save his own son and live a full life. That's just my opinion. That's just my speculation. It doesn't change anything. And once again, Shad Gaspard, dead at the age of 39. This morning, I wake up to yet another sad news that was reported out of Japan, as Stardom's wrestling upcoming rising star Hana Kimura passed away at the age of 22. It was confirmed on the Stardom website as concerns were raised after Kimura posted images that are no longer there. So if you're going to look, you're not going to find anything. And yes, I know, because I try to look. So they might have been already deleted, taken down by who knows, but they're not there anymore. But apparently, Hana Kimura posted self-mutilation pictures on Twitter, along with messages that read nearly 100 frank opinions every day. I couldn't deny that I was hurt. I'm dead. Thank you for giving me a mother. It was a life I wanted to be loved. Thank you to everyone who supported me. I love it. I'm weak. I'm sorry. I don't want to be human anymore. It was a life I wanted to be loved. Thank you, everyone. I love you. Bye. It's a rough translation from Japanese, so if I'm off by a word or two, I apologize. Also, on her Instagram, her last couple of stories had her posted with her little kitten in Japanese, which is roughly translated saying to the little cat, I love you, have a fun, and live a long life. I'm sorry. Stardom would release a statement saying, Stardom fans, we are very sorry to report that our Hana Kimura has passed away. Please be respectful and allow some time for things to process, and keep your thoughts and prayers with her family and friends. We appreciate your support during this difficult time. Daughter of Kyoko Kimura carried on the family tradition. After leaving Wrestle 1, Kimura returned to Stardom and became the leader of a faction called Tokyo Cyber Squad. She is a two-time Artist of Stardom champion, also a former Goddess of Stardom champion. And this I was not aware of because it's only in Japan, and I wouldn't even know where to look this from. But apparently, Hana Kimura joined the Netflix Japanese reality show of Taurus House late last year, and fans have spoken out about Hana being previously cyberbullied. Although there has been no official word of the cause of death at this time, but many are speculating that that's what led to her loss of life of cyberbullying. I'm not one of these experts or detectives that could put the pieces together, but if the writing's on the wall, obviously something was wrong. There have also been numerous reports of clues and hints that something was wrong, but unfortunately, no one jumped on that as any friends or family that would point this out to others, but apparently not to her herself, to reach out to want to talk to her, to Kimura that is, and offer any kind of help or some kind of helpful conversation, some advice, some guidance, anything. So I'm not going to speculate exactly what the cause of death is any more than what the reports are saying. But if it is anything to do on relations with cyberbullying, I mean, how many more times do we have to go through this? This 22 years old. I'm not sure how it works in Japan, but to me, if this happened here in the States, barely just out of high school, maybe a year or two in a college career, and allegedly gets cyberbullied from how many directions and by how many people, Lord knows what was exactly told. I mean, usually when it's the worst of the worst in cyberbullying, it really messes with your head and can make you start thinking in a direction you never thought of before, and it's all negative. It's all downhill from there. And if you can't reach out at that point to anyone for help, there's only so much more anyone else can do about that. If we're not aware, what can be done? If cyberbullying is responsible, whoever put out those messages, sent those, maybe they were private messages and not necessarily posted on Twitter or Instagram for the public to see. But don't kid yourself. The authorities will catch this persons, and hold them accountable to the nth degree. They may not have been he or she responsible, the physical responsibility of taking the life of one Hana Kimura, but they were definitely the cause of it. It's not. It might not be a specific murder charge or homicide, but definitely, they will definitely be held responsible. I encourage anyone who's listening that even if you're even the slightest bit of concern for a friend of yours, a relative, a young cousin, a sibling, whomever, that something is off. And it may not even be being directly to do with anything in school or in the playground or whatever, but just ask, is everything okay? If not, talk to me. Whatever it is. Someone broke my toy. Someone threw dirt in my face. Try to lay out and explain what could have led to that. Okay, let's hear from both sides of the story. And I know there are parents out there that would immediately jump. Okay, where do they live? Let's kick down the door right now. That's not going to solve anything, because then the focus will be on you for that kind of reaction, and everything else that led up to it is like a slap in the wrist. Like, well, don't do that again, and you stop kicking doors down. I don't know when or if I will get an opportunity to be a parent myself, but you know what? Helping raise my nieces and nephews, well, it's a lot. It takes a lot of responsibility. It takes a lot of time, a lot of patience. And you can give them all the space, all the privacy you want, but once in a while, you got to jump in and say, hey, what's new? What's going on? One day they're sitting around a table, conversating what to look forward to for summer vacations or the new game or new movie that's coming out. Next thing you know, they're just burying their heads in tablets or other smart devices or sitting behind a computer, nothing to do with homework. All I'm saying is just to be a little bit more involved, a little more active with their children. They could be 40 years old at this point. They're still your kid. And you want to be sure everything's going as smoothly as possible, and for him or her to have the most richest and happiest life they can possibly live. I didn't know much about Hana Kimura, but when that story came across my desktop, I was floored, and something that should not have happened. And hoping those who are responsible will be dealt with properly. Let's change moods here a little bit, as difficulty as that can be. But apparently an announcement out of nowhere from WWE, well, more specifically NXT, almost about 2 months ago, that Dark Wednesday took place, where numerous talents, agents, managers, referees, what have you, writers, all terminated, some furloughed from WWE. And one of the names was Kurt Angle. He even confirmed it later on after everyone got their notice over the phone or a text message. So Kurt was to believe long gone, away from WWE, released from his contract, more than likely never to be seen from again, at least not anytime soon. So what happens earlier in the day? NXT posts all over their social media that this coming Wednesday, in the match between Matt Riddle and Timothy Thatcher, in their cage match, special guest referee Kurt Angle. In the words of Deadpool, what in the ass? Where did this come from? And how Kurt Angle didn't, well, he confirmed it, but he didn't provide any more details any more than what we know at this point, as far as who reached out to who. If is this a one-off? Is it just to set up the environment, so to speak, because everybody knows about Matt Riddle's background in MMA, Kurt Angle's training, and probably would have tried his hands in the career of MMA. If anyone's seen the film Warrior, Kurt Angle ironically playing a Russian MMA fighter. It looked amazing, by the way. Didn't have little to no speaking scenes, but he looked like he belonged in the octagon or a cage, what have you. And he fit like a glove. It looked amazing. So, yeah, right now there's no other details as to how Angle was brought back to, well, NXT to be specific. And I guess we'll find out this coming Wednesday night how all that plays out. It's being reported that WWE talent has had to adjust a little bit of the wrestling style, so to speak, to accommodate, to have the talents more vocal between them during matches. Basically taking advantage of the empty arena concept, and with no audience to drown them out when they're trying to speak to each other. Not to call spots like John Cena, but more to be basically, well, I don't want to say a bully, that'd be a poor choice of words, but if you're the heel and you're egging on your opponent, like, come on, that's the best you got. I thought you were the GOAT, or I thought you were the best that Canada has to provide, and blah, blah, blah. So basically antagonizing your opponent in a vocal way, loud enough that the cameras can pick it up, and of course have the baby faces respond to, oh yeah, well, here I come, kind of thing. So if you haven't noticed, that's been going on the past couple of weeks, and I'm surprised they haven't done it sooner. If they were concerned about picking up audio from the two wrestlers, for example, inside the ring, and they're nothing but call spots, well, I get that. So the section of the performance center that they've chosen to create that little mini arena, so to speak, inside, well, I mean, you can hear the echoes when there's a bump taken. You can hear the commentators, whether it's the SmackDown or Raw, but especially the SmackDown commentators, because they're closer to the ring, and all the cameras are ringside during the match, especially. You're gonna pick them up. I usually listen to the Spanish commentating. I just make those little setting changes on my remote, and when they're silent, you can still hear the American commentators in the background during the match. Point being, it can be very loud, well, quiet enough for anyone to be loud. So if the referee sneezes, we're gonna hear it. Hopefully Vince doesn't see that. According to Wade Keller, wow, I almost said Kellogg. According to Wade Keller of the Pro Wrestling Torch, saying that a good idea of the talent has had to shift their in-ring style after being more than encouraged to put the bad mouth on each other during their matches to create more of the environment. Hopefully no loud calls either. So yeah, basically, again, taking advantage of the situation of an empty arena. So they should have done this a lot sooner, but I guess it took time. You learn as you go, one week to another. I think the biggest one was changing the hard camera position, a la AEW. And yeah, I'm still gonna jump on them on that, because if you're looking at AEW as the inferior brand or company, it's so funny how one week you have a different hard camera angle, then a couple of days later you have AEW premiering their empty arena shows, and their hard camera's fixed on the entrance only. It's like, oh, why? Whether it's Vince or Kevin Dunn, whomever, why did we think of that? Let's avoid showing the empty seats or the blackness of the environment that would have been the audience. Let's just show all the lights and the brightness of the backstage, the settings and the stage and whatnot, the rampway, and keep the camera there. And they haven't moved it since. According to PW Insider, one of the WWE's most integral producers is no longer with the company. the now former vice president of global television production, Michael Mansouri, gave his walking papers several months ago and officially departed from his role last week. He's been with the company since March of 2009. Started as an associate producer and quickly climbed up the ladder, not the corporate one, but production ladder. Some backstage even dubbed him as the next Kevin Dunn. Please don't be the next Kevin Dunn. Nobody be the next Kevin Dunn, please. If they're referring to as the next Kevin Dunn's position, sure. But as far as production and directing TV shows as of late, hell no. He was also seen as being one of Triple H's integral plans for the WWE if and when he ever took over. But it's no secret, and it's been said many times, has been explained many different ways. Whenever Vince steps down, he resigns, he sells, committed. Triple H is definitely going to have their own vision how to run WWE. And more than likely, they're going to get rid of a lot of Vince's guys, a lot of Vince's people who've been running production longer than they can probably admit. And honestly, yeah, we've always talked about changes for the better in WWE. No better place to start than the presentation and the production value. Raw, SmackDown, and unfortunately, even NXT fell into it. And that was one of my personal and biggest concerns when they jumped to the USA Network. And sure enough, leading up to that debut, that's how they started producing NXT like Raw and SmackDown, with the constant zooming in and out cameras. Why is it that there's got to be a small earthquake going on backstage every time somebody's interviewed? Why can't the camera just stay still? Like, whoa, you guys feel that? Real? So your match coming up tonight, like, what's wrong with you, cameraman? You don't feel that? Yeah. So anyway, you're going for the Intercontinental Championship. Would you stop moving so much? What? Yeah, that's how I look at it. That's how I see it. It's complete bullshit. It doesn't add anything. It's just no. So yeah, again, a lot of changes that need to be done, and hopefully I'll be one of them. So we'll see how that goes, and if anyone's even going to step into the role as vice president of global television production. I would place my resume, but I wouldn't qualify. No thanks. Fightful spoke to, according to Fightful, spoke to an unnamed WWE higher up who says that, quote, nobody here faults him. Him is referring to Roman Reigns for not performing during the pandemic. They also noted that there's no timetable for his return, and that creative is not factoring him into any plans right now, which makes sense. And apparently that includes editing him out of previous WWE footage, especially the lead up to this Money in the Bank ladder match, the men's ladder match, just a couple of weeks ago. And the top 10 cash-ins, Seth Rollins cashing in at WrestleMania over Brock Lesnar. Roman Reigns, who? Completely edited out. But here's the thing. Another WWE person speaking to Fightful, not giving any names, said that Reigns is doing fine financially and that they have no idea why he wasn't in the Money in the Bank video where Seth Rollins cashed in on Brock Lesnar. How convenient. That's like asking a photographer, why are you taking pictures of that bird? I take pictures of bird. That's my favorite animal. It's not going to say that it's a peeping Tom, is he? So, again, we don't know these names or what the positions are of these higher up people from WWE. And to me, I feel like someone knows somebody. If these guys aren't directly involved with the production crew or when it comes to editing and putting together video packages, they'll deny till the cows come home that they don't know why. Bottom line is, again, nothing makes TV, whether it's what we see or what we hear, nothing gets on TV without Vince's approval. So if Vince saw that, And it's like, well, he backed out on us for WrestleMania. Oh, well, leave it as it is and present it like that. With Roman Reigns edited out of the video package of Money in the Bank. That's just me speculating. So again, nobody knows. At this point, does it really matter? How one of these people know that Roman Reigns is financially doing well? Does he sign Roman Reigns checks or Joe Anawani's checks? Does he tap into account? Or, I mean, how would he know that? Sure, the man now who recently had his wife give birth to another set of twins, taking care of a lot of family right now. I would imagine you would have to be financially secured. But how the hell would you know in detail? Oh, he's doing fine financially. Yeah, that raises more flags than anyone else, than anything else. But matter of fact, that raises more eyebrows after the fact of, who cares about Roman Reigns being edited out of that video? So again, a little suspicious there, but whatever. The XFL seems to not want to stay out of the spotlight, or at least the news media. But XFL is going through a sudden decline into bankruptcy, and a new report from The Athletic suggests that Vince McMahon may try to buy out the league of its bankruptcy in the court in Delaware. Speaking to various XFL creditors and sources, Daniel Kaplan noted that the XFL president, Jeffrey Pollock, has called venues in St. Louis and Seattle about reinstating lease agreements. After launching back in February of 2020, the XFL lasted just 5 weeks before shutting down due to the pandemic, and since then, the league has surprisingly shut down for good and filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in mid-April. According to the report, however, some team officials believe that they may have been a purposely plan by McMahon in an effort to potentially ride out the pandemic and subsequently economic turmoil without actually paying to operate the league. That's illegal. You can't do that. Whether or not McMahon actually plans to reinstate the league once the pandemic is over remains to be seen. But it's not likely, like the last time it's not like this will be the last time we hear about the XFL. So, what is going on? Again, all this according to the Athletic. What in the teabag hell is going on? You shut down production. Well, not production. You shut down operations for the football league. Less than 24 hours later, everybody gets fired. And I never remember seeing the term furloughed. Everybody was fired, let go, terminated. Don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. Players, coaches, officials, cheerleaders, they all got axed. Then they filed for bankruptcy. And then there were at least 2 lawsuits, one being from the XFL CEO suing Vince for wrongful termination. And about 2 weeks later, we get this. I guess it's good to know people in higher places, or at least get what sounds like a good financial idea. Just pretend to shut down your league for a few months. Just, let the paint dry, let the grass grow. Dot your T's, cross your I's, or whatever that shit's called, and let everything play out, and then quietly come back, pay out the difference, basically pay out what the league has lost in profit and revenue during the time that it's been, quote, terminated. Just reading it, hey, I'm no expert. I'll admit that here with, one hand up and swearing that and the other on the Bible. But to me, if that's what Vince is doing, McMahon, doesn't sound legal at all. But honestly, I thought it was all over with the XFL stories after the lawsuits were out in public, and that'll be that, and we'll just wait to hear the end results. But now this, yeah, like this, like the Athletic said, we more than likely have not heard the end of the XFL. So we'll see. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch tonight's AEW Double or Nothing 2, Electric Boogaloo, on pay-per-view as well. My usual source is not working, and didn't change the fact that there were changes made to the lineup, and it all started during this week's AEW Dynamite, where there were 3 injuries reported, and it was forced changes to be made for tonight's Double or Nothing. So Ray Phoenix, who hurt his hip during a dive on the outside to the outside of the ring, will now be replaced by Joey Janela in the Casino Ladder match. Dr. Britt Baker hurt her right knee after having Nyla Rose slammed on top of her by Hikaru's Shida during a tag team match, and now she is out of Double or Nothing. And Matt Jackson, after returning to AEW on the same show, performed a dive off the wall onto the inner circle and possibly injured his rib, but may still compete tonight. But then again, last I've read, and numerous reports that he was taken out of Double or Nothing. So again, unfortunately, I don't have the rundown or the results. Well, I can get the rundown, but the results of tonight's Double or Nothing, which is probably at this point more than an hour over. I'm gonna have to have the results for you guys next week, so I apologize. Ric Flair has re-signed with the WWE at the age of 71. No details about the contract, but unlike The Undertaker's new 15-year deal with the WWE, ironically, that will see The Undertaker with the company until he hits 70 years old. Holy crap. Ric Flair's previous contract expired back at the end of 2019. Flair would later tweet out after the news broke of his new contract with WWE, then, now, and forever, indicating that he plans to stay with the WWE for the rest of his life. So, I guess so. I mean, look how well your daughter's performing. Where else and how else are you going to have an opportunity to style and profile on television or be there for the next championship win? Young Charlotte captures, she's up to 10? So if the plan is for her to break Daddy's record, then yeah, she's got to win 6 more titles. Hopefully not all in a row, because that would make no sense. As we all know, the man is pregnant. Becky Lynch, that is. So Becky and Steffi, I almost said Stephanie. Wow, that would have been, what the hell? How did that work out? But Seth Rollins and Becky are obviously happy about that, except Jim Cornette. If you haven't heard this rant well, it is a rant. Let's face it. Pretty much half the time, that's all Jim Cornette does is rant. And I only recently discovered that he's once again uploading audio to his YouTube channel, and this is where I was fortunate enough to come across this tidbit. But yeah, last week after the announcement was made, Becky Lynch is expecting. She had to surrender the Raw Women's title to Asuka after winning her Money in the Bank ladder match. And if you haven't heard it, basically what Jim Cornette was pointing out and complaining more than anything was the timing of it. Not the fact that Becky could not go out with her fiance, Seth Rollins, and, I guess practice making babies, but it doesn't matter, unless you're a fly on the wall, you don't know exactly what happened and what conversation was between the two as far as, oh my God, Becky's pregnant. What is this going to mean for my career with WWE? So, Jim Cornette and the comments he made about Becky Lynch about her pregnancy were saying, this is a multi-million-dollar talent, and she tells me she's pregnant? What the fuck? This is like one of the boys breaking his leg and on purpose while he's on top. You can control this. This is not like a fucking injury. Again, this is the words of Jim Cornette. This could have been controlled. It's not like I don't ever want them to have children. But when both of you have top spots where you can make 7 fucking figures a year and blah 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 blah, wait 3 years and have a fucking baby. Now, I could vaguely, I'm not in the business to say, nay or yay, but I can understand Jim Cornette's point of view. Like, you're a top star, and all of a sudden this happens. Again, we don't know if this was planned intentionally, or if, either way you look at it, and if it wasn't just something, in the heat of passion. Becky and Seth, and I can't believe I'm describing this like a porno, but Becky and Seth are intimate, maybe had some of the bubbly from Jericho's website, and they got a little freaky deaky, and next thing you know, she's knocked up. Okay, Mazel tov. You guys are engaged anyway, so obviously the next step, if it wasn't for this new step taken to be pregnant, is for you guys to be married. Personally, I can't be any more happy for them. If I knew when and how, I'll send them a bouquet of flowers and a pre-order of diapers for them. Who knows? But as a fan, it's not my place to say, hey, you shouldn't have done that, or go along the lines of what Jim Cornette's saying, why not wait a couple of years and then have your baby, blah, blah, blah. Then there's the counter argument of, well, the older you get, the more difficult it is. And both Seth and Becky are in their 30s, roughly young. They can still wrestle for like another 5-10 years, maybe then try to have a family. Who knows? But it will be difficult. History has shown that. Seth Rollins will reply to Cornette's comments during the WWE After the Bell show, saying that it hurts my feelings on a personal level because Jim Cornette, that is someone who is a legend in our industry, and says, and he's someone that I've personally worked with in my time at Ring of Honor, and for him to come out and say some real negative things, some real misogynist things about women in general and pregnancy in the industry, it was just it just caught me off guard and made me lose a lot of respect for him, who a lot of people had already kind of lost respect for, and that being Jim Cornette. And well, he speaks his mind. I'm not here trying to defend Jim Cornette. I'm just saying how it is. Jim Cornette has never been shy to speak his mind. He's very old school. He still believes that a lot what worked for the business, the industry back then, can still work today, but because it's become more of a circus, more of a sideshow attraction, where the focus is more on entertaining and less wrestling, where on that part I do agree on. It's just send the entire business into a whirlwind. I mean, I could have done with not acknowledging it. If you want to congratulate someone for expecting a child, so be it. But to add on, like Jim Cornette did, and again, I do understand and appreciate where he's coming from, but at least, you know what? When Jim Cornette was running OVW and one of his talents came up to him and said what Becky said to Vince, more than likely Jim would have had a titty attack. And let's just say to Becky and Seth, well, just be thankful that Jim Cornette is not in charge of talent relations or dealing with your contracts, or much less not in a position of Vince McMahon to say, you SOB, you just screwed me over. I've God knows how much money for the rest of the year I could have made off of you and your fiance. So now I'm going to lose you. And at some point, because Becky is expected to give birth sometime towards the end of the year, you can expect for Seth Rollins to be written off somehow. Whether they beat the crap out of him, whether he turns his back on his disciples, his new one being Austin Theory, by the way. It just really sucks. I mean, for Becky Lynch, at least everyone in WWE that I'm aware of is more than happy for her, and can't be any more grateful for that. Same thing with Seth Rollins, despite what we see and hear on television in character. But she's at home now, preparing to be a mother, like she said. I'm pretty sure she's not going to forget where she came from as far as her wrestling career, and one day, after a year or so, she will be back. At least that's my hopeful thought. One thing that Jim Cornette did point out in his rant, that it doesn't always work out, that once you give birth and you have that little extra time off to recover and get back into ring shape, not everybody wants to return, or not everybody has, that little spark in them anymore to make that comeback. And that's happened. And who knows how much is Becky Lynch going to be back in the ring after giving birth. What at that time, I would assume she will already be married and maybe moved into a new house. Who knows? This is all speculation for me. But for her to be back in the business a year or so after giving birth to her child, I mean, cut her some slack. It is what it is. At least she wasn't terminated like everyone else was on Black Friday, Black Wednesday, along with Seth Rollins. I mean, imagine that. That would have been a whole completely different story and argument. Oh my God, Vince McMahon fires Becky Lynch, and here we are 1 or 2 weeks later after WrestleMania, and we find out that she's pregnant. How dare Vince McMahon do that? And then the whole focus and attention will be on Vince. This is why you can't make everybody happy, folks. And Jim Cornette, again, he's going to always forever speak his mind. And for those who are curious, yeah, he does have his comments about that and everything else that's been going on as of late in the world of wrestling the past few weeks. He gave his thoughts about the passing of Shad Gaspard himself, and a lot. I think he does a great job in keeping up with what goes on, which is a lot from one week to another between WWE, NXT, and AEW, and from around the world. So give it a listen, see what you think of it. I'm split down the middle of it from at least Cornette's point of view, but I completely agree with what Seth Rollins had to say as far as a reply. So let's not add on anymore. Let the happy couple be happy and be ready for parenthood. Ember Moon's career may be over. This week she was on Backstage, and the topic was about her being sidelined with a torn Achilles. And of course, she has been out of action since last September, where she suffered the injury during a segment involving the 24/7 championship. The injury occurred in a segment where she was running and all of a sudden just stopped. And I don't remember how much of it was caught on camera, but you would see her in the background, and was running. I don't remember her stopping and dropping or anything like that due to the pain, but there was so much objects in the foreground, it was difficult to tell unless there was a different angle. But during the backstage segment, says, I look back at my career in WWE. I've been there for 5 years. I look back, I should have been the one to defeat Asuka's streak, or me and Bayley at SummerSlam. I wish I'd done more. The more and more I sit back and look at everything I would redo, I think about my injury currently. It's just going to be a while before I do so. As far as she's implying that, as far as seeing if she can make a comeback from this. Moon ended the segment by saying that she's going to prove to everyone that she's worth redeeming those mistakes and those regrets about admitting what she just mentioned about Asuka's streak and all that. But she's an incredible talent in the ring. Honestly, I know she was injured. I wasn't remembering what it was exactly until I came across this story early in the week. And first of all, having an injury on your Achilles heel, any kind, torn, bruised, or what have you, yeah, it is painful. And it's no joke. And at no point was surgery ever mentioned, or how much longer does Ember Moon expect to be out before she gets an official statement from her doctors. But here's hoping. I mean, she was great in the ring. She could have been definitely one of the participants in this recent Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. But and that's the thing that a lot of people, a lot of fans are forgetting. Not so much that people are choosing not to work because of the pandemic, but others have been injured too, and they just happened to be injured right before it started. They're still injured during, and more than likely going to be injured after. So, I mean, some people just need to choose their battles more wisely, because at the end, most of the time, they're going to lose the arguments. Well, how come this one got a shot? Why is she getting a shot? What the hell have these people been? Stop, take a deep breath. If you're too lazy to Google any of these things, or use whatever search engine you might have at home, or remind yourself why so-and-so is not around right now, yeah, you need to take a chill pill. I don't know what else to tell you. So in closing, well, it might be one story left, but it's a lot. This week, this past Tuesday, matter of fact, saw the season finale of Dark Side of the Ring. And it was the episode that many fans were waiting and anticipating for, covering the last days of Owen Hart. Now, for those who don't know or remember, I don't know how you can't. 21 years ago today, May 23rd, Owen Hart fell to his death in a stunt gone horribly wrong at WWF's Over the Edge pay-per-view in Kansas City, Missouri. As I said, this week saw the season finale of Dark Side of the Ring, covering the Owen Hart story, where we heard from widow Martha and daughter Athena and son Oj for the first time in a long time publicly. Leading up to the episode, Martha had spoken to Chris Jericho on his podcast, Talk is Jericho, and there pointed out a lot that were rumored or needed to be confirmed, such as Owen Hart never going to the WWE Hall of Fame, thus making Mark Henry's cries for reconsidering in vain. Martha will never allow Owen to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame because she does not want, quote, the company that killed her husband glorifying him. She also says Martha Hart was sued by the WWE and Vince McMahon for breach of her late husband's contract, noting she wasn't sure if she'll get the justice for her husband's death. So she created a foundation in his name, the Owen Hart Foundation. A little clever there, if you ask me. On a personal note, good job on the Dark Side of the Ring crew. I was calling them the Dark Side crew, for not making the episode of Owen Hart a Cornette versus Russo affair. Russo, by the way, was not featured nor mentioned at all throughout the episode. For those who don't know, he was the, quote, creative genius and the writer, the only one at the time in 1999 for WWF. And between this episode, the last, quote, shoot interview that Russo had about 2-3 years ago with Hannibal Television, there are a lot of conflicting details about the story, but depending who you want to believe, who you want to listen to, I'll be here all night to debunk any of it. But I'm just going to go on what was mentioned on this particular episode for those who were there, just such as Jim Cornette, Jim Ross, The Godfather, D'Lo Brown, Chris Jericho, who wasn't there yet with the company. He would come in later on that year in August. This happened in May, obviously. But I believe Jericho was already between him jumping from WCW to WWE. But he said it here that he was watching the event from home. But the detail about Owen Hart being afraid to go up into the rafters and descend from the ceiling down into the ring. Again, that's another conflicting account. According to Russo, he said everything was fine. He never showed any kind of concern, and blah, blah. We rehearsed it once, blah, blah, blah. If you watch Vince McMahon's press conference after Owen Hart's accident, he says that there were several rehearsals. Martha here says it only happened once. She was told it only happened once. But as far as no one ever explaining or saying that Owen Hart did not show any kind of concern or doubts throughout the day, well, according to Jim Ross, Jim Ross felt that there was something off, a little bit off of Owen hours leading up to the pay-per-view. He felt that something was wrong. But Jim Ross did clear up one thing, that a new WWF contract was offered to Owen Hart due to the Montreal screw job after Vince tore up the old one, confirming that Owen did not want to be, this was something else, also confirmed that Owen did not want to be in an angle with Deborah McMichael, where supposedly on screen, Owen Hart will be basically cheating with Deborah behind Jeff Jarrett's back, who was his tag team partner at the time. Martha says before the pay-per-view, Owen was supposed to go home a couple of days before the pay-per-view, so this would have been either Thursday or Friday. Instead, she gets a phone call from this lady, this girl, as she described it, that Owen needed to be called back to the office for measurements to be fitted for the harness, and pointed out that this lady said, we just wrote it in. Now, this, again, for years, this Russo guy has always maintained his, not innocence, but he always pointed out, like, I wrote that in. It was my idea or whatever. I'm not going to try to imitate that fool. But here, saying Martha got a phone call for some lady who works for the World Wrestling Federation, saying that we just wrote it in, didn't specify, didn't even give the lady's name, if she even remembered it. So a lot of contradicting arguments here. So you know what? I try not to step on myself like that again. Owen, according to Martha, Owen never questioned his safety. And as I said before, Jim Ross felt Owen was concerned during the day. Jimmy Corderas, who was supposed to be the referee during the match between Owen Hart as the Blue Blazer versus the Godfather for the Intercontinental title, he nearly had Owen fall on top of him in the ring by inches. Based on reports from fans who sat ringside who were questioned by local authorities, Owen was yelling, "Look out." D'Lo Brown mentioned when Owen was taken backstage into the EMS, to the ambulance, he was told by Jerry Lawler at that point, right? And this is before Jerry Lawler returned to the commentators table. D'Lo Brown said that Jerry Lawler told him, "I think he's dead." The Godfather said Owen had turned blue when he was being stretched out into the ambulance, raising once again the argument about the cancellation of the show. And it should have been. I had doubts back then, but now looking back 20-something years later, yeah, the show should have been canceled, off of refunds, whatever. And as Martha Hart would say and point out, that entire arena, at least the area where Owen Hart fell and died, is now a crime scene. Vince called Martha, who at first she thought it was Owen doing an impression of Vince, and finally told her that Owen had fell and that someone will later on call her to explain what happened. The doctor who treated Owen at the hospital at the Truman Medical Center calls Martha and says that she needed to fly down to Kansas City. Instead, Martha wanted to know right there and there of what happened to her husband. And the doctor, according to Martha, the doctor got a little emotional and wanted to make sure that the doctor told Martha that he tried everything to save his life, but unfortunately, your husband has passed away. During his eulogy, Martha said that there will be a day of reckoning. They even showed police photos after Over the Edge went off the air, from the catwalk looking down as Martha and the kids were climbing up there days after the event, and see how far Owen fell. What was not seen much during the pay-per-view, or they were just avoiding it altogether, the blood stain near the apron where Owen Hart landed, but it was seen in the overhead shots of the police photos. Martha showed the clip, as she called it, that little gizmo that held Owen in place with the harness. That's usually used for sailboats for a better idea of what it looks like. It's similar to a keychain, except this one had a button on the top that you press and it would release the lock. And this particular clip didn't need no more than 6 pounds of pressure to work. Evidence shows that Owen Hart never pulled the cord to release himself, nor the clip itself. Martha would later file a wrongful death lawsuit against the WWE and the rigging company in Kansas City. Vince's legal team countered suit and tried to have the case moved over to Connecticut, where, according to Martha Hart, there would be no punitive damages awarded. Try to be slick there. There were many Hart family members that were against Martha's lawsuit and did not support her, going as far as stealing court documents from Martha's house and to give them to Vince's defense team. Many felt that those from the Hart family sided with Martha would burn those bridges much sooner than expected. After a year of a legal battle, an $18 million lawsuit was reached. And I believe it's safe to say that neither of his children, Oj or Athena, would follow Owen's footsteps into the wrestling business. They blamed wrestling for taking their father away. So for the first time in 20 years, a new Owen Hart shirt will be now available, or is now made available through ProWrestlingTees.com. All proceeds will go to the Owen Hart Foundation. Martha Hart will also speak to CBS Sports this week, mentioning pretty much everything that was said in the episode. And this led to WWE's legal representative, Jerry McDivitt, who is, well, let's just say not friendly with everybody, but he is part of Vince McMahon's legal team, and put out a statement of his own. And even Jim Cornette chimed in on this. I'm not going to say what he said. If you'd like to hear what he thought about this move, yeah, take a listen on his YouTube channel. But basically, McDivitt here said, the reality is, we have never told outside of the story of what happened, at least not outside of court. We told it in court, but when she talks about the way the lawsuit unfolded over the years, it really isn't accurate what she's saying. What she did whenever this happened is she hired a lawyer in Kansas City who was caught essentially trying to fix the jujitsu section process to get a judge that was more in their liking. We caught them and went all the way to the Missouri Supreme Court. There, the Supreme Court said, no, we're not going to let this happen. They essentially appointed an independent judge to come in from the outside of Kansas City to oversee the proceedings. We were basically trying to find out what happened that night. Martha was not remotely interested in finding out what happened that night. She just wanted to use it as a vehicle to beat up the business, and she didn't like that her husband was in the wrestling business. And you know what? Anyone can draw their own conclusion about that. But you know what? To me, this says not so much of a cover-up, but McDivitt on his own, which I'm pretty sure didn't get any marching orders from Vince or anyone. But why you got to be a dick about it? You know, how many other widows have you gone after, and because you think or you know they're not telling the full story, which is true. There are two sides to a story. But how many times has WWE, throughout the 20-plus years that Owen Hart has passed, have they been reached for comment or statements about what has happened with Owen, any more details, and so on and so forth? Go back to that infamous press conference where Vince McMahon has asked about how come there weren't more safety procedures taken or more steps taken in order to prevent this. Vince just turned to that reporter, this female reporter, and says, well, I resent your tone, lady, and I don't know about the other safety procedures. I guess you're an expert because I'm not. So, yeah, it just recently happened. It's still fresh in everybody's mind, but does that give anyone the right to be that defensive or that combative? Everyone's in an uproar between Vince, the WWF at the time, Martha Hart and her family, the children who probably didn't understand. They're both in the mid to late 20s at this time. So essentially, they became adults without their father, and that's a huge pill to swallow. So it pisses me off that McDibbit here took it upon himself, as best I could tell. Just like, oh, she's not telling the whole story. Of course not, because how many times is anyone legally allowed, whether the case is closed or not, to share information outside the courthouse? Or maybe you guys were giving a cease and desist, but Martha wasn't, and well, if that's the case, look into that. And again, to be so defensive, specifically towards the end here, to beat up a business. The business is and has been doing just fine. Unfortunately, there have been so many deaths in wrestling, in and out of the ring, since Owen Hart has passed. Hell, I just mentioned 2 of them this week. But the fact is that the ignorance of this supposed legal representative from the WWE, that she just didn't like the business that the husband died in. Well, fuck you. Who the hell are you to say that? Don't want to use anybody else's names as examples here, but again, there have been too many deaths this week as it is, not just in wrestling, but so much around the world from what's going on with this craziness that I've been saying for how many weeks now. The business will be fine. But I noticed in this statement, and if there was another one before or after, I'm not aware of, but it's pretty funny how they've yet to acknowledge or specifically draw out what mindset anyone was in, even though it was craziness, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't that crazy enough not to decide to cancel the fucking show after someone died. On your watch. On live television. In front of tens of thousands of people while 100,000 more people watch at home. But you don't like it because she's speaking out, because you think she's going after to beat up the business that took her husband's life. Real class act there, buddy. Knock on wood. If I ever go against this guy in a court of law, I'll be sure to bring up all this bullshit against him. Hate to end this on a real emotional and testosterone-driven note here, but this is the world we live in, folks. Between not making everyone happy, to not getting everything you want, to assholes just being assholes. This whole week I just look at, despite, like me right now, as I'm saying all this, I am physically drained, but not psychologically screwed up to a point where you got to call bullshit the way it is. And as a crazy week that it has been, especially in pro wrestling, specifically in pro wrestling, now is not the time to be, just this self-righteous or, gullible person, because probably to you think your reputation, the way you live and your character, you as a person, is being questioned, or the company that you work for, your boss, you're mad because someone's insulting your boss. Your integrity is being questioned. Everyone, let's enjoy the remaining time we have of the Memorial Day weekend. Please continue practicing social distancing. Wear your masks. Wear gloves if you know you're going to be in close proximity of others. Keep 6 feet apart. Check in on others if you haven't heard from in a while. I say, as I always do, everyone, to be safe. Be safe, behave, be good, be healthy. Till next time.